Hey there guys, this is Mr. George, and this is the first web lecture of the economics section of Civics and Economics. This unit is all about introducing you to the idea of economics, so this web lecture will be entitled Introduction to Economics. Now the main thing we're going to be talking about today is the factors of production. Now, when we talk about factors of production, we'll get to that in a little bit, but the first thing we need to talk about is really what is economics? Because no doubt you're thinking to yourself, well, it has to do with money, it has to do with people's jobs and the economy, but it's really a little bit broader topic than that. Economics is the study of how people make choices to satisfy their wants. Now, typically when we think about economics, we are thinking about how they make choices monetarily, what they spend their money on, what they choose to, where they choose to work, what kind of jobs they have. But really what it has to do with is just choices to satisfy your wants, and those wants are not always involved with money. For example, you must choose how to spend your time. So that is also the idea of economics. So there's the economics of time. So when you get home, you can choose to either sit down and do your homework, or maybe you'll take a nap. And so those are choices that you make, and it's all about the economics of your time. Now businesses, on the other hand, they need to make other economic choices. So for example, they choose how many people they need to hire, and along with that goes lots of different options that they have. They need to figure out how much they're going to pay people and how long they're going to work, and so those are all things that are involved with economics as well. So when we talk about economics, one of the first things we need to talk about is the idea of wants and needs. And so when we're looking at these, we think, well, okay, so part of economics is satisfying your wants. But before we even get to our wants, we need to first talk about our needs, particularly when it comes to economics and spending money. So the idea of our needs, these are things that we have to have in order to survive. So these are our needs. These are the first things, and sometimes not even choices, when it comes to economics. Things like air, food, and shelter. Before we can determine what we want, we obviously have to determine and take care of what we need. Whereas when we're talking about our wants, these are items that we desire, but these are not things that are essential to our survival. So for example, we need shelter. We need to live someplace, we need to be protected from the elements, but we do not need to live in a mansion. We need, because of where we live, we need shoes, but we do not need the brand new Air Jordans that are about to come out. So this is the difference between our wants and our needs. And we as individuals deal with this difference. Businesses deal with this difference as well. They need to hire people to produce their product, but they do not need to hire 200 people to produce their product if they are a relatively small company. So we will be looking at the wants versus needs a little more in depth as we move through this unit. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this web lecture, we're going to be mostly focusing on here the ideas of the factors of production. And when you start your business for class, this is something that you will consider very specifically. And there are 4 factors of production. Those factors are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. This is probably my 3rd favorite word in civics and economics. I love the word entrepreneurship, and it is also the longest single word in civics and economics, just so you know. But I will go through each of these, land, labor, and capital, here specifically to talk about what each of these is and how it relates to the factors of production. So first we're going to talk about land. And when we're talking about land, I don't mean just physical land, but I mean natural resources. So anything that can be used to produce a good or a service that comes from the earth. These are all natural resources, and this is what we consider land in a business or economic sense. And there are really 2 different types of land. There are renewable natural resources, and there are non-renewable natural resources. So if we're talking about a renewable natural resource, we're talking about, let's say trees. Trees are a renewable natural resource because they continue to perpetuate themselves, and so that would be something that we could renew. If you cut one down, you can replant a tree, and that continues that cycle. However, there are lots of non-renewable natural resources we use in the United States in our economy as well. The most probably widespread that we use is oil. Oil is a non-renewable natural resource. Now, you could argue that if we wait around long enough, it could be renewable. But the dinosaurs that created the oil, the dinosaur bones that created the oil that we use now, that was millions of years ago. So none of us are going to be around long enough to see that renew itself. So as far as we're concerned, that is a non-renewable natural resource. And so those are two types of land that we use. Now the next factor of production is labor. And so when we talk about labor, we're talking about the effort a person devotes to a task where they get paid. So anything that you do to get paid, that is the idea of labor. So if you wash somebody's car and get paid for it, that is your labor. Me as a teacher, I teach you, and I come to school and I make lesson plans and teach you lessons. That is my labor. Now you may feel like you are laboring while you're at school, but since you don't get paid for it, therefore it's not labor. It's what I would consider a privilege, but that's a whole different discussion. So anyway, the next factor of production, we've got land, now labor. The next one is capital. Now, oftentimes when we think of capital, we think of money, and certainly money is one type of capital in a business sense, but in general, capital is considered to be any human-made resources that we use to create other goods and services. So, for example, if you're making a pair of jeans, the zippers would be a type of capital because that is a man-made item that you use to put into your product, and so that would be an example of capital. Now, obviously, as I said before, money is also a type of capital because that is created by humans, and we use that to buy other goods, sometimes land, natural-made products, other times other capital, and so we use capital quite a bit to create the goods and services that we use. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about as far as a factor of production is entrepreneurship. And this really is probably the most important factor of production because without entrepreneurship, you can have all the land, labor, and capital you want, but it won't really do you any good. Because entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship is the ability to pull all those things together. You pull together land, you pull together labor, you pull together the capital, and it's your ability to create and market these new goods and services. So if you are a good entrepreneur, you can pretty much turn any land, labor, and capital into a money-making scheme. However, as I said, you may have the best land, the best labor, and the best capital, but if you don't have a new idea or a new way to put this land, labor, and capital together and market it to the public, then all those things won't do you any good because you must be innovative, you must have something that people want in order to be successful. Now, when we're talking about land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, part of that is the labor. And when we talk about labor, we need to talk about wages and salary. So this is what people work for usually, and this is something that you have to consider. This is an economic choice you have to make, either as a business owner, whether you're going to pay somebody a wage or a salary, or as an individual who wants to work for a company. You need to decide whether you want to work for a wage or whether you're going to work for a salary. Now, a wage is an amount of money that is paid to a laborer based on their skill level, based on their education, sometimes based on their experience. And there are different types of wages, or at least different kinds of positions that get different types of wages. And so jobs sometimes are categorized into skill levels. And those skill levels determine what kind of either wage or salary you get. So for example, if you are an unskilled laborer, which probably most of you are, if you go to get a job, you are going to get paid the least amount. Your hourly wage will be based on your education, your previous skills, what you are able to give to this job, and so you will be an unskilled laborer. So there are lots of unskilled labor positions. So if you, let's say you work as a cashier at a grocery store or at a clothing store, that would be an unskilled labor position. Now, some people get hired as semi-skilled laborers. So, for example, if you this summer get a job as a lifeguard, that would be a semi-skilled labor position because you've gotten some training to do that job, but really that's not a ton of training and you don't really have to do a lot in order to get that kind of position. So again, you don't get paid a ton to do that kind of a job, but you get paid a little bit more than somebody that would get an unskilled labor position. Now, the third type of hourly wage is somebody that is a skilled laborer. So let's say that you are a carpenter. You have been trained as a carpenter, you have practiced carpentry, you've apprenticed with somebody. That is a significant amount of training, and as far as hourly wage position goes, those get the highest amount of money. That's the largest hourly wage position. Now, other people, particularly people that are in professional labor positions, these are people that are salaried. So usually these are people that have gotten some sort of undergraduate or master's degree. Usually they are salaried. Now, obviously salaried employees get a set pay no matter how many hours they work, which can be a positive thing, but in some cases this is also a negative thing, particularly if you work in an enterprise where there's quotas and things like that you need to get done. You could work 20 hours a week and get paid the same amount of money, but you also may work 60 hours a week because you just work as much as they need to get the job done, which is why then you are a salaried worker and often in a professional position. So this is just a little bit of background for our introduction to economics, and we will be applying this to our businesses as we move through this unit. Thanks, and have a good night. Bye-bye.